Welcome to We the Waste People podcast. I'm John Brown.
And I'm Butterfly Screams. We're two pissed off Americans trying to make sense of what's happening in this country. Whether it's coming from the right or the left, our goal is to call out the people driving our national collapse.
Join us today as we try to deconstruct what went wrong with the American left. As always, we'll conclude by highlighting another billionaire hell bent on making your life suck.
So before we get started, just a quick check-in. I feel like it's time for a what are we doing kind of chat about
Okay.
about it all. But how are you feeling about all like do you still enjoy doing the podcast, and do you feel like we're like you're happy with the direction it's going, I guess?
Yes and
Content
yes.
wise.
Yes and yes. I
Yes
feel
and
like
yes.
I do feel like we're still trying to, I don't know, get our feet underneath us as far as the content goes.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm good with it. I don't know why, but I really liked our conversation last episode around all the white supremacy bullshit.
Yeah, that was fun. So I think for me, I am struggling a little bit with just like where I'm at personally,
Okay.
um, in terms of the political situation and landscape. I feel like I've been undergoing this transformation that started pretty much as I was getting ready to leave my job, where I've sort of been in this state of like questioning my own um, echo chamber that I lived in up until that point,
Yeah.
and I've continually just kept, thinking outside the box. And uh, here in the last few months, I've really made an effort to step outside of like the news sources that I'm watching. Like, let me just say, one thing that I've noticed over the past couple of weeks that's really been getting under my skin is the way that like left-wing media misrepresents Candace.
Such
I have
as
I have been watching her show since Charlie Kirk's death every single day. I've not missed an episode. And the way it gets talked about in, like, we'll call it mainstream left media, like on the internet, like the Majority Reports, Breaking Points, it really makes me angry because like like, yes, Candace Owens has her issues, right? Like she has said some really fucked up things. She's not altogether there. But she thinks she is, right? And at the end of the day, like, you know, we all live in our own bubbles. We all exist in our own bubbles and the influences that shape those bubbles, And so, like, do I think Candace Owens is a bad person? Yeah, she's probably got some grifter qualities, but you know what? Everybody on the right wing would say the same thing about people on the left wing. You know what I mean? And I hate the way, like, specifically, okay, say what you want to about her stupid investigations into, like, the France's first lady being a trans person, whatever. I don't care about that. Care none about it, okay? Really don't. What I care about right now as it pertains to Candace is the investigation of Charlie Kirk's death, right? And yes, she's pulling on all kinds of different threads, right? Like wherever, like she's literally doing this with thousands of people on the internet. She's got a tip line that she, has people send her things to, right? And so her investigation has taken her down some rabbit holes, right? As any good conspiracist would, right? They're going to go down every rabbit hole that seems like it makes sense. However, at the end of the day, I think her heart is still rooted in truth about what happened to Charlie. I think she's right. I think she is actually pretty damn brave to question the narrative, especially, given the fact that the regime, they've got their narrative and their story that they want to push, it's important to them to have everybody think it's some left wing crazy Trantifa person, like that's what they want people to think. And she was bold enough to be like, nah, man, that's way too convenient, right? And so the way that people represent her investigation in left-wing media really pisses me off because it's totally dishonest. Like the leftist like media personalities can sit there and say it's a crazy story, or they actually give credence to it. Like they're like, well, we do have questions about the FBI, but the stuff that Candace is doing, that's just beyond the pale. Like it's crazy, dude. And I don't know. Long story short, I'm just in this weird fucking place where I've stepped out of my echo chamber. And I remember Anna Kasparian talking a lot about this when she was kind of going through her transformation, where she too stepped out of her media bubble. And she did start to see that, when you start watching the other side, you do kind of start to see how both sides like intentionally misrepresent one another,
Oh yeah.
and so like that's just where I'm at. Like I'm, because of Candace, I'm now seeing that Anna was right. Like it's true. Oh, and I got no love for Tucker Carlson, but there are some things that he gets right. And again, the same thing is happening to him. You know what I mean? With the left, like misrepresenting him and just like insisting that everybody hate him and that he's, a liar and all these things, which maybe he is. Who knows? Who cares? The fact of the matter is he's right on this particular thing. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at. And it's like, I feel like I'm existing in this upside down world where, a lot of people that I care about a lot, like that would consider themselves on the left, are still just like living in this world of like performative like politics where everybody's like upset about this or that, and we need to resist, and everything is so performative. Like none of it is real. You know what I mean? Nothing, it feels real to me that people on our side actually get it and are actually doing what it's going to take to, I don't know, John, it's hard to explain. I guess I'm just saying that like it just feels silly to me to debate like political issues at this point when there's been such this like realignment, I guess, of like what the actual left and right is, this like weird populist right wing thing, that's going on. And it's just like, I don't know,
So
man.
I get what you're saying. I watched. So Wajad Ali is one of my go-tos now on the drive home. I go back and forth between Savvy and Wajat, and again, I don't watch everything both either one of them put out, but when I see a headline, I'm like, okay, what's this about? And one of the more recent ones I've watched from Wajat is, he was talking about what comes after MAGA, and it's basically America First, which is going to be far worse than MAGA. And one of the things he talks about in there, and again, I love his take on the left, especially the corporate left, the Democratic machine that is the part of that side that's just absolutely driving. They're the part that drove Bernie out. They're the part that controls things. But he talked about Candace. He talked about Tucker. He talked about Fuentes.
Mm-hmm.
And what he and I don't the guy Jared Yates that he had on the episode with him were talking about with those influencers was that they are going further left on certain things such as Israel, such as what was one of the other things they talked about?
War.
Anyway, yeah, that war, but on a few things. And but what they're doing is they're going further left than the Dems, and they're able to grab more people, but they're not going to be truly left on everything. But they're grabbing people that would normally be like, oh, hey, they're making sense, and then they're going to pull them over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I do not keep up with Nick Fuentes, but the dude's dangerous, right? He's got the ears of a lot of young men. And I think about my nephew. My nephew absolutely could fall prey to someone like Nick Fuentes. And I can't believe that Nick Fuentes has got the following he's got. I mean, what a fucking joke, but somehow he's reaching people. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's kind of what my crash out was, not last week, but the week before. And it actually ended. The crash out came to a head watching a Sabby Sabs video. I had started the morning off flipping through TikTok, and one of the first videos I came across was a white dude he was stitching someone else's video. White woman, I guess she's apparently out in the New York area. And he was making her video started off, and the only thing he showed was that she was saying, you know, you shouldn't be willing to vote for Jasmine Crockett and the other guy,
James Tallarico.
Yeah. Right. So the video that the guy did was like, oh, I wonder what it is that makes you say not to vote for Jasmine Crockett. Right. And, you know, he let some of her clip video play, but he was very selective in what he showed. And he made it about a race. You know, he made it about race. And it's like, in this country, I can see that being the issue. But then when I was watching Sabby's video, by that time I had seen the rest of the video, or at least the majority of it, where she's talking negatively about both, you know, Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. But my problem is, and Sabby kind of, you know, she drove it home for me, and it really pissed me off and just made me crash out, because she's like, you can't really vote for either one of these people, because Jasmine Crockett is, while she's not taking money from AIPAC, she is pro-Israel. And while Tallarico is up here talking bad about, you know, all these wealthy people, the wealth hoarders, and all that, he's had relationship, you know, he's got some sort of relationship to Miriam Ellison. And basically Sabby left it with, you shouldn't vote for either one of these. But there's nobody else to vote for other than John fucking Corridan. So what? We're going to stand, and the original video, the young lady, you know, when her video finally came and I saw the whole thing, she's like, so clearly, you know, genocide isn't basically people were still willing to vote for somebody, even though that was going on. Right. It was, and Sabby mentioned that, you know, the Green Party should have somebody up there, or one of these other left-wing parties. And what pissed me off is that they're all these people are saying, don't vote for James, don't vote for Jasmine. But if they're going to vote, either they're going to stay the fuck home and not vote for anybody, they're going to vote for one of those two, or they're going to vote for fucking John Corridan. And right now, there's a lot of people that cannot afford to be single issue voters. They just can't afford it. And John Corridan is fucking horrible. Sure, maybe neither one of these two are good, are great, but you got to make the best of what you got until you can make better, right? It's like somebody starting their own business. Let's say I'm going to go out here and I'm going to start my own, I don't know, construction business. Well, I don't have all the fancy tools that people in the business for 10 years would have. So am I going to go out here and spend a lot of money I don't have to try to get those tools to do jobs I may not have yet? No, I'm going to go out there and try to get those jobs and make the best with the few tools I do have until I can afford to go get those tools. And that shit is pissing me off, because there's so many people out here saying you can't do this with these people because they're this, and this. Okay, but what about these motherfuckers out here that you're saying that we shouldn't vote for these two, but yet again, these people are out here, you know? And Sabby made a comment about Jasmine Crockett, you know, saying that, you know, she was stand up to Trump. And Sabby's like, well, kindergartners can stand up to Trump. That's bare minimum. Maybe that's the case. but nobody else is fucking standing up to Trump. Very few people are actually fucking standing up to Trump. As a matter of fact, there's an entire fucking Republican Party that's never once stood up to the motherfucker.
Yeah.
So at what point do you have to give a little bit to get something that's a little bit better until you can fucking work on the goddamn base of that other party and grow that other party so that it can actually compete with the two fucking parties that are there now? Or are we all just supposed to stay home and let it fucking go as it's going?
Yeah, and see, that's where I'm so afraid to just like be totally honest with you. Is like I'm in the savvy camp. Like I guess you could say that, like, for me, I feel like we've reached the end of the America that we grew up in. You know what I mean?
So what's the alternative? We just fucking strap in and hold on, and wherever it goes, it goes.
No, for me, I think the thing is like I kind of live in these like two parallel worlds, right? I'm gonna still continue to, like, I guess, vote for the lesser of two evils, right? And that and that's the thing, like, because if I'm being totally honest with you, I think electoral politics is done. It's over. Like we have lost. Right. I think that we are officially in our authoritarian empire stage where we have tyranny and all that stuff. However, as long as I still get the chance, I'm still going to go and cast my vote for the lesser of two evils and just kind of live on a hope and a prayer that, you know, somehow incrementally we're going to just like inch our way back over to like sanity or whatever. But then there's this other parallel world that I live in where I'm just like, I'm totally real, and my expertise in like history and humans and all of that shit that's like constantly in my ear about the reality of the situation, right? And that's telling me, like, prepare for collapse, prepare for the darkest thing on the horizon the best way you know how. And for me, that was moving out to the country, you know, trying to learn, you know, more self-reliant ways to do things. And in the meantime, try to meet other people who are interested in that sort of thing. You know what I mean? And start to like build networks of people that when and if shit goes sideways, I can lean on those people and say, hey, you know, let's try to get through this, you know, together as this like new unit or whatever it turns out to be. I don't know. I can't totally read the future. However, I can say with some pretty a pretty high degree of certainty that the future is decentralized. You know, like,
I get what you're saying, and I get what Savvy's saying. My problem is you did a better job right there of understanding and talking about the nuance than Savvy did. Savvy didn't say anything about still going, holding your nose and go and vote for this lesser of two evils. She just said, hey, both of them suck.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, both of them suck in the fucking system we're dealing with. And yes, I'm doing the same fucking thing. I'm living every day like a fucking capitalist. I have to right now until it goes away. That's the fucking world I live in.
Mm-hmm.
But until that fucking completely goes away, I'm going to do everything I can to fucking make the best of what I've got. And right now, the best of what we've got is the system that's still voting. Maybe it won't mean a fucking thing, but I have to believe that it will because there's been a lot of fucking seat changes in the last year. Fuck, there's been other special elections in smaller fucking areas for mayors and mayoral races in areas that were extremely red that have gone blue. And again, maybe it doesn't count in the long run, or maybe it does. I don't know. Again, we've talked about this. I don't want to go back to what it was in 2012. I don't even want to go back to what it was in 2008. I'd like to go back to the fucking 1940s and 50s. Only I'd like to go back there with fucking people, everybody having civil rights. We shouldn't even have to fucking have a fight about civil rights. And I got that in my fucking notes here. The fucking Democrats gave up and fucking shot themselves in the foot all because a bunch of fucking bitch ass white people in the South couldn't handle black people getting the equal rights.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there's
they walked
definitely.
away.
Go ahead.
I was just saying they walked away from a fucking they had in the 40s and 50s, and I meant to look this up, and I did not what the tax breakdowns were, but I know the top tax tier brackets or tax tier rates were extremely fucking high, extremely fucking high, and the only people that didn't like it were those goddamn long-term businesses that have been around forever. But otherwise, life was good financially for everybody. But white people were so fucking frail about black people getting fucking equal rights that they said, fuck it, I'd rather be poor. I'd rather not have shit and give everything to the fucking wealthiest than to let black people have fucking equal rights.
Yeah. I feel like maybe there's some of that, but I feel like that's letting the powerful off the hook too much. I think that Democrats definitely did their fair share since the 60s of just handing over their power to corporations, to the wealthy class, basically.
Oh, I agree with you.
Um,
But that goes back to my point earlier about the only people that wanted things to change as far as the way the financial system was set up in our country were those major corporations that have been around forever.
yeah. Right, but it was the liberal politicians that allowed like these tax rates to go the way they went. It was these liberal politicians that are totally responsible for pushing neoliberalism on the rest of the country.
Okay, hold
And
on. Are
seeing
we
our jobs
recording
go
yet?
overseas. Yes.
Okay, because we haven't introduced it.
Yeah, I figure let's just keep going because like I
Okay.
feel like we're so far into it. But I really just I don't know. I just felt the need to just come to you completely honest and authentic about where I'm at right now. And so anyway,
That's cool.
but uh just to say that like okay, like I'm struggling with a couple of things here. One is the left. First of all, how that's defined in our country is just that's like the number one thing that drives me absolutely insane because the truth is we don't have a left in this country. Like if you want to go by like especially in terms of like economics, yeah, no, there's no left that exists in this country. And so because of that, the left has done nothing but concern itself with culture war issues. And I'm not trying to say that racism and all the isms don't exist and that they're not a problem. They are, but they exist because of the economic structure that we live under,
Okay, do
Like,
me a favor. Do me a favor. We talk about education all the time. Go into detail about that because, again, when you look at and we talked about it last episode, when you look at that town outside of Nashville that is a very, very well to do fucking pretty much white town where they're leaning heavily. It's the one that had the female lady running for, I think, mayor of the area, and or maybe she was running for governor, and she had Nazis like supporting her, and she wasn't backing down or saying that she, didn't disagree with them or anything. Do you remember that?
oh, the Franklin mayor lady.
Yeah, that.
Okay, can you repeat your question? I totally got
So
distracted by something on my screen.
you're fine. So I guess ultimately my question is to explain go into more detail about what you're talking about with the financial structure of our country driving those isms, because you've got
Right.
Franklin, which is a very affluent white community, but they are going hard on the Nazism, the racism, all that fucking shit. And yes, the are the Democrats guilty for all the cultural war bullshit? Yes. What they're more guilty of is always being horribly fucking reactionary. But the right is the American right in this country, and let's be honest, the American left in our country, as we know it, is on the right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're defining left and right politics by the financial left and right, then the American left, Joe Biden is on the right. Kamala Harris is on the right. Absolutely. You got Biden you got Trump who's even further right, and then there's a bunch of motherfuckers further right than that. But when you talk about economics and economic politics, you've got that little area outside of Nashville where there's all these affluent people, and there's even people like that fucking financial guru. What's his goddamn name? Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
He's all into that shit, and that's his area. That's where he's from and lives. And he drives it just as much as anybody. He drives those racial issues. He drives that culture war bullshit. Why? And if it is a financial issue, why do these wealthy people drive it? Why does Trump drive it?
Power. They want to hold on to power. They want to hold on to their capital, to their to the system that they have benefited from, right?
I agree with that. But are you saying that if we were looking at if he was being completely honest, that he's not really racist, he's just using that tool to keep power?
I don't know what's in the head and heart of Dave Ramsey, so I don't feel like I should really speak to that. However, Trump, the thing is like, I don't want you to think that I'm saying there's no such thing as racism and things like that, and that it wouldn't exist without. What I'm saying is that the class structure that we live under inevitably intertwines with racism and all the isms, because the fact of the matter is like, at the end of the day, it all boils down to power, right? Like economic power, material conditions. Okay. And so you have the wealthier class of people that understand they are on the top, and that in order for them to remain on the top in a democratic world, they have to have a healthy section of the country, like supporting them, right? That like a healthy number. And so that's why they turn to culture war issues to remain on top. Are they also racist? Probably to their core. Yes. Yes, but again, you can't separate it out from the fact that they're at the top of the power structure either. Right?
You can, maybe not for them, but for the people on the bottom. And they're on the bottom, and they are so caught up. And again, this goes back to the 60s. Up until 63 to 69, I believe it was, whenever the Civil Rights Act was passed, but it was in 63 is when the Democrats started losing their power, and the financial structure really started to change then. Because when you go back to FDR and coming out of the Great Depression, you know, the financial structure was not then what it is now. But you come out of the civil rights movement, and literally ANES, so the American National Election Survey polling data, examining more than a dozen questions, authors found no evidence that white Southern voters were more conservative on non-racial policy issues before 1963. If anything, they were slightly to the left of white voters elsewhere on domestic issues. But racial ideology in the U.S. played such an outsized role in American politics then that they fuck it, I'd rather be poor than to let black people have equal rights. And these are people that didn't have power. These are people that didn't have money. These are everyday, ordinary people of the South.
Right.
And they said, fuck it. Let me be poor. Just don't make my daughter go to school with another black person or with a black person.
When you say that, what comes to mind for me is like, okay, coming out of the 60s, one thing we don't talk about enough when it comes to the civil rights movement, like we remember it now as this entirely social, like identitarian thing where, you know, different groups of people were finally getting equal rights with other, you know, parts of society, right? But what is left out of the conversation is that the civil rights did not exist without an economic program backing it up, right? Like Martin Luther King was all about, like, he understood that you'll never have total equality without like some sort of universal economic program or thing that levels the playing field for everyone. Like, he understood that we can't forget like poor whites. Like, we can't entirely focus the conversation on identity. There has to be an economic component driving the larger issue, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we don't talk about that, though. Like, when we talk about this, when I say we, I don't mean us specifically. I mean just like in general, you often hear the economic component left out of the conversation about civil rights. And the reason for that is because after the 60s in academia, there was this like sea change in terms of like, you know, philosophy and politics and all that sort of thing, to where, you know, and it also coincides with the dawning of neoliberalism. And that is like this idea that, like, you know, everything's about identity now. I feel like I can play for you a video that is going to explain what I want to say right now way better than I can. So can I play that for you?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to play for you a conversation between Vivek Chibber and this guy named Adam Conover. I don't really know much about Adam Conover. I just know who Vivek Chibber is, and I just feel like
who Adam Conover is.
Oh, really?
I love Adam Conover. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just feel like Vivek just does such a beautiful job explaining, like, you know, what happened after the 60s in terms of like the social versus economic problems in the country, and why, what happened to the left, why the left just sucks now. Okay.
Say that most of the left is nuts. What do you mean? Or I guess to get more specific about that, what are the problems that the left has culturally that prevent organization?
Well, what happened, as you said, you know, I would say by the late 70s, the left was smashed in the United States. And what do we mean by the left? We mean, if you're talking about a left, you can think about it in one of two ways. Historically, what the left has meant is some sort of organized presence, which can actually make an impact on the political scene, a party, trade unions, something like that, so that you actually can shift the political culture and the political agenda a little bit. So the left means some kind of organized presence. The second way you can talk about it is a kind of a vibe. Lefty intellectuals, the cultural sphere, individuals who have certain inclinations. You know, today, if there is a left in the U.S. at all, it's the latter. It's people who are kind of left inclined, hew to progressive values, and they're almost entirely located within the college educated scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's the left today. Well, what's happened is that once the left became primarily upwardly mobile professional people, they changed the content of what it means to be a leftist. Until the 70s, if you were on the left, it meant you were for the working class. You were for working people. Even if you were from the middle class, you directed your activities so that it would, in some way or form, through a variety of connections, in somewhere in that chain of connections, you would be helping the working class movement in some way, the anti-imperialist movement in some way. That was, once the working class organizations were destroyed, you just kind of had a middle class culture that became more and more inward looking rather than outward looking.
Mm.
And campuses became the main place where people on the left debated among themselves. Campuses had always been important, always. But that was where you came to the left to be sent out into unions or a party.
Mm.
It was the place where movement or leftism, in your life, you came to the left, but you didn't stay in the left in campus politics. You moved out.
Right.
What happened by the 80s was that was the only place where you found left politics. And so left politics came to reflect the culture of campuses, the culture of people in campuses. And a lot of that is just this crazy part. It's performative. You get point scoring for being the most ultra person in the room, the most intransigent. And since you are not disciplined by the reality of whether or not your tactics and your strategy are having a real effect in the world,
It's hypothetical.
hypothetical and performative.
Yeah.
The coolness points come from being extreme.
Mm-hmm.
That this isn't far enough. I want to go further. This isn't enough. I want to do more. So the reality check of whether or not your ideas are being cashed out through real gains for people disappears. And what comes is point scoring in rhetorical debates and in performativity. So a kind of a extremism over time can take over. I'll tell you one, this is unpopular. The other reason it's kind of nuts is it attracted a lot of nutty people.
Mm-hmm.
When the left is driven to the margins, which is what happened in the 80s and 90s, it's no longer in the mainstream because the unions are gone, the party isn't there. And you're on campuses. So how do left organizations on campus attract upwardly mobile people? They're not going to attract them by saying, hey, join the working class. They attract them by saying, hey, are you unhappy? It's capitalism that's making you unhappy. Come to us. We'll figure out a way. So the people who come to and I can attest to this biographically because 90s when I was in the US, I saw this. The people who come are people who are just upwardly mobile, frustrated, middle-class people who think being on the left will give them more friends or deal with their pathologies or their neuroses, their unhappiness. So, the way I used to put it in the back was a broken left attracts broken people. And that's what coming into the 2000s, that's where we were.
Okay. So I don't know what your thoughts are on what he had to say. I saw you shake your head yes a few times. I'm curious what struck you there.
So I think ultimately what struck me is I agree with what he's saying, right? Especially when you talk about the late 70s and 80s. And that's exactly the timeline of when I was doing the research, when we asked, hey, when did the Democrats, abandon Southerners and rural people? That is the exact timeline that I found. Now the catalyst, if you will, and I get what you were saying earlier about the financial aspects of civil rights, and no, Black people were absolutely left behind, and there were some white people that were left behind financially in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, but it was a smaller scale than what it is now. I mean, we've gone from a financial pyramid in this country to a financial fucking hourglass. You know what I mean? So basically, you got two pyramids. Only the one up top is very small, and the one on bottom is very large. And there's just such a much greater wealth disparity than there's ever been. And I completely agree with the fact that was an issue then. However, the data that I found said that it really, instead of white people saying, hey, let's bring these people with us and let's stay to the left financially, they said, fuck it, we're going to go to the right. And we're going to say, screw our own best interest. And we're going to, let our racism be bigger than our need to be financially prosperous. Now, that being said, Democrats fucking, for whatever reason, and I still haven't figured this out yet, Democrats were like, hey, let's follow the right. Let's follow the Republicans. And again, there's several things that they did this with. And, Lee, I keep talking about that era of the 60s. And I think I talked to you a little bit about Lee Atwater and the rabbit hole I went down with him. And, Behind the Bastards had the best deep dive into Lee Atwater I could find anywhere. Most of them were very dry. 30-minute long was most I could find from anyone. And again, they were dry and not very good. Behind the Bastards did a really good three-part series on Lee Atwater, and they were basically going through an autobiography of him, or maybe it was just a biography of him.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
I totally consumed all three.
yeah, and the dude, and again, he did not create the Southern strategy, but he fucking fine-tuned it, and he fucking ran with that shit. And horrible story that the dude's got from his childhood, but for whatever reason, you know, you come out of the civil rights movement. You've got Nixon and Lee Atwater coming into age with Reagan, and that whole fucking, you know, looking at crime, being tough on crime, and it started with Nixon, the war on drugs, and then Reagan ran with that heavily, right? And that significantly impacted Black and brown people more than it ever thought about having an impact on white people. And by the way, I'm going to come back to this in a little while when we get to the wealth order of the episode. And then, you know, fucking Clinton and Biden doing the 3 strikes, you're out fucking thing, which was horrible. And Democrats just decided to be Republican light instead of actually coming up with real policies that were going to help everybody, especially on the financial side. And I think this goes back to your point where they were like, hey, we can be part of this wealth class and just say we're fighting for these people and make it all about identity. And yet we can still ride the train to the top and pretend like we're helping the bottom.
Yeah. And see, for me, this is where, you know, I think about like DEI and like what it literally means, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? On the surface, it sounds great. Sounds wonderful. It really, you know, taps into the heartstrings of us empathetic folk who want to see, you know, fairness and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know, there's a difference between equality and equity, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so like equality, as far as I've understood it over my years, is that equality is very much concerned with economic and political, you know, equality, right? And making sure that everybody's on the same level. And there was, you know, particularly in the halls of academia, the intellectual elites, they really kind of moved away from conversations about equality, like specifically as it pertains to like political equality, to a conversation about equity, which you have to like think deeply about that and understand that there's like an implicit like concession to capitalism there. It's almost like, well, we're no longer going to talk about the problems with capitalism and how it creates so much inequality. Instead, we're going to concede that capitalism has won. And instead, we're going to focus on equity, where it's no longer, now it's just about making sure that everybody has the same access and opportunity to a certain wealth class, right?
Yeah.
And so that's always been my issue with DEI. I just, and like, I remember like working in academia and it was all the roar. And oh my God, when I tell you I was such a DEI cheerleader, I literally chaired projects on the diversity committee. So I was once that person. So I don't know why, but I get so like wrapped up in my fears of like people thinking that I'm racist because I'm no longer, like, I'm not there anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I used to be in that camp, but I'm not. DEI is just, it's all, you and I have talked in the past about how it affected me very personally, you know, in my own experiences, and how, I don't know. Do you think I should like speak on that? Like, should I talk about that?
Yeah, talk about it. And if, you know, you can edit it out later if you don't like it.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, so there's the equity component that I just talked about, but then there's the diversity and inclusion part too as well. And there were other letters added along the way, by the way, like access was later added to that acronym. But anyway, so for me personally, the way DEI impacted me as a white woman who I guess is a part of the LGBT community. It's not something I care. Like, I don't know. People probably think I have like some kind of like internal shame about it. But honestly, it's not that as much as it is. I just don't fucking care. Like, I don't care to let everyone know about my sexual orientation. I don't. It's not something that I care to lead with about myself. You know, I'd much rather people get to know me, Butterfly, the person, and if it comes up later on somehow down the way, whatever. But when it comes to like jobs and how it plays out in the professional world, I found myself being forced to talk about the fact that I'm in the LGBTQ camp just to have even a chance at getting my resume read if I wanted to apply to another job. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is this thing called diversity statements. Now, it's been 3 years since I've been part of the academy, so I don't know if they're still doing it. I'm thinking probably not at this point. But while I was there, it became very fashionable as part of all the DEI initiatives to require that anybody, like new recruits, submit what they call a diversity statement, right? And basically, in addition to your resume and your references and your cover letter, you had to write a diversity statement that talked about how what you've done to further diversity, equity, inclusion over the course of your career, or what your plans to do that would be at the institution, So right off the bat, you're forced into this situation that, like, for me as a white woman in a field that was like totally saturated by white women, when I went to apply for jobs at other institutions, I was competing against a lot of white women, but also, others who are not white and that sort of thing. And as somebody who worked on hiring committees, I can tell you that, yes, they meant it when they were looking at DEI, right? You were more likely to be picked if you were from a marginalized background, right? You were more likely to get your resume on the top, And so, like, for me, if I wanted to go work somewhere, I was forced into revealing my sexual orientation because as a white woman, I'm, already seen to have all the benefits and all the privileges. And, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I was forced into a situation where in order to apply for a job and to even feel like I had a chance at having my resume looked at, I had to reveal all this incredibly private information about myself that I was not comfortable revealing. Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And so that was how DEI impacted me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like, oh, poor white lady, she might not get a job or whatever. Fine, whatever. You're entitled to feel that way. But at the same time, I'm here to tell you, like, the whole thing is just ick. It's fucking gross. And I didn't like it. I didn't like being forced into, talking about my personal life. My goddamn sexual orientation is my business. Okay. I understand that, like, some people are super proud of their gayness and all that stuff. Great. I'm proud with you. I'm happy for you. And I'm all about it. But for me personally, I don't care. I don't consider that this like foundational part of my identity. I just don't. And like, yes, it's a piece of me, but it's not the whole me. And I should have complete and total authority over when and how I disclose that information. I shouldn't feel like I'm in a situation to have to disclose that, or I'm not going to even get a look by a potential recruiter.
Yeah, I get that and I understand it. And again, I did not go to college. I don't know the academia world at all. I mean, when I got out of high school, I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here, I'm never going back. But again, that's a whole nother conversation and story. But I when I think about it, and again, I don't remember the large pond company that I work for having DEI anywhere in their handbook. What I do remember is when I worked my way up to a manager and started, and again, so I started off at this in this company as just a CSR making $8 an hour, 8.50 an hour actually. And when I worked my way up to the manager and started turning that store into one of the biggest stores in the Midwest region, um, and I became a mentor. I'd go out and I'd mentor other managers and talk to other managers. And then when I became a multi-unit manager, I was over 6 stores and had lots of conversations with managers. But one of the things I did personally when I became a manager was I looked around the room and I looked at my business and I said, I feel like, and again, I'm living in a capitalist society, so yes, I'm working as a capitalist. But the best way for me to represent my business the best and get the best out of my business for the company and myself and my employees was to make the staff that I had resemble the customer base that was coming in, right? And so my customer base was not an all white customer base. I had a large diversity of customers. So I made my staff very diverse. And this the company I worked for in the city I was in had 12 total stores. There were 9 right there in the main city, 3 that were um, in another city that was a little bit further away. We're in the same market. But anyway, there was 2 that were within they were less than 5 miles away from me. And I remember having a conversation with one of the other managers about his staff and hiring people. And he literally had an all white staff. And he finally hired someone who wasn't white. But before he did, we had had a conversation about his hiring practices. And I remember him saying, I don't see color. Okay, you don't see color, but yet you don't have anyone who's not white on your team. Your team does not reflect your customer base. And that was the way for several managers, right? So there's no diversity in your store. Now, is it right or wrong to hire based on diversity? I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation. What I do know is that at some point, or going, if you could look back over, since I can remember these things being an issue, equal housing is a law for a reason. Equal opportunity is a law for a reason. Without those, you get systemic racism in systems that have major impacts on people's lives, including their ability to live and work. Um, when I listen to your story, it reminds me of when I read Cenk Uyghur's book. I think it's Justice is Coming, and he talked about the pendulum swinging on issues like this a little too far one way or the other, and the other side has to pull us back on things. And it sounds to me like we pulled, the pendulum might have swung a little too far one way on trying to be diverse. But when I think about that, I have to wonder, okay, were the applicants completely equal? Were the resumes identical? Would people be able to get promoted or take that position without it? Because I know in the past that people would absolutely be denied positions, be denied jobs strictly based on skin color, right? And I don't know what the right balance there is. I don't know. I guess that ultimately what I'm saying is until our system is completely changed and is no longer a patriarchal white supremacist system, things like that have to exist. Otherwise, you end up with the Pam Bondis and the Pete Hegseths of the world running these positions, Cash Patels, in these positions that they never should have been in, right? And Cash Patel is not a white guy. He identifies as white.
Yeah.
We'll see you in Valhalla, brother. But
so
I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense or if I'm actually completing a full thought here. It's just that I know it's very nuanced. I know that it's I know that our system is shitty and has been shitty for a long time.
Yeah. I have two things that you triggered in my brain with that that commentary. On the note of Cenk Uygur, it's funny you mentioned how the pendulum swings too far back or too far the other way sometimes, because just a few nights ago I was watching TYT and they actually did a segment on this new study that just came out that showed, and don't quote me, I have a terrible memory. The broad point that I think they were trying to get across is that, yes, the pendulum has swung too far the other way, because a study just came out demonstrating that white men are now being discriminated against when it comes to hiring practices. And so I did not go look at the study. I have not, dug any deeper than just hearing what they had to say. And I, without reading the study or knowing where it came from or anything like that, I can say that, yes, it only makes sense that at some point it's going to have a negative impact if there's not a more, if something isn't done to sort of anonymize, I guess, hiring practices. And this brings me to my next point, which is that, I think it's possible for us. I feel like the answer to this problem when it comes to hiring is there. Like, there's a way to solve the problem, and it's just, it hasn't been done. It would be, a huge change to how things are done. But surely there's got to be a way in 2025 to anonymize the hiring practice, like of, especially when it comes to like the initial part of like, submitting your application, resume, and all that stuff, where you're, I don't know, let's say you feed it into a software system or whatever that company is using to, collect applications, right? For that software to assign a number to the person submitting, right? And so basically what the hiring manager only sees is the actual like resume and cover letter or whatever. They don't see a name. They don't see any identifying information. They just see the actual record of the person applying, right? So I just feel like there are ways to go about having blind submission processes, and those are the things we should be talking about, not DEI or making sure we meet quotas on this or that. I just, there are ways to make it fair, I think, without such emphasis on identity in the process. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that. I guess on the note of like culture war stuff, I'd love to show you the next bit of this video where he then goes on to talk about like wokeism and the culture war side of what's gone wrong with the left. And if you're interested, I'd love to see your response.
Yeah, let's watch
to that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, the next he's gonna go race and gender, and then he's gonna move on to wokeism. And when I watched this the first time, I was like, yes, because let me say that, like, so much of my perspective and how I've come to the positions I've come to is because of the time I spent in academia, where a lot of the cultural left that we know today got its, like, it's in the state it's in because of liberal intellectuals. Okay. the culture of academia like filtered its way down into, you know, the American political left, and what, you know, we are culturally on the left now is a reflection of academia. And as somebody who was there for 16 years, trust me when I tell you that couldn't be more true.
Your belief in some leftist positions or problems in the world, you know, people
but their solutions to them tend to reflect their own class position.
Yeah.
So let's take the issue of race or gender.
Part.
Sure.
You're very serious about racism. You're a college educated person of color or a woman, and you're very serious about gender. You're going to articulate gender issues or race issues the way you experience them. This is just sociology 101, right? I mean, and so if you're not a working class person or not in the workplace yourself, the way you experience race is going to be different because you are a aspirant college professor or a tech engineer or something like that. You may be well intentioned, but you may pose the problem of race, gender, sexuality, but your solutions to those problems are going to be reflective of your place in the world. And that's why, you know, we talk about identity politics a lot, and maybe in this interview we will. It's not that the left says you shouldn't take race seriously. It says that the way race is experienced by working class brown and black people is very different from the way it's experienced by tenured college professors or small business owners or something like that. That's the difference between a left that takes up social issues when it's rooted in the lives of working people and a left that takes up social issues when it's rooted in the aspirations and the frustrations of the professional class.
Is that your critique of identity politics generally? Because I've heard you speak about this before, and you're a critic. I mean, you use the phrase wokeism or woke, which is, you know, that is such a contested word, and it's become a slur on the right that I often find it not useful for me. Yeah. But why do you use it? And is that what it's referring to? Is specifically the racial experience of this sort of like upper intellectual class?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that woke is kind of meaningless now because it's just been taken over by the right, and they use it to refer to any claims around race or gender or something like that, and even economic demands. But the reason they're effective is that there was something real there. Something actually was taking over identity politics in the last 4 or 5 years. Because you have to ask, why does the right think it can use this word as a slur? It doesn't use trade unions as a slur. It doesn't use workers' demands as a slur. It uses woke as a slur. And the reason is something did happen in identity politics. I look at wokery as a kind of a mutation within identity politics. So let's define all of these terms.
Sure, please.
Look, the socialists for 100 years were not only sensitive to race and gender struggles, they led the movements around. All the anti-racist movements in the United States after the 1920s were all led by socialists. You know, all in the anti-racist leaders in the CIO were all black, and they were all coming out of or orbiting around the Communist Party. Or they've been educated by.
What about the Southern Civil Rights movement? The Martin Luther King movement.
They were all socialists. They were all old lefties. They were all A. Philip Randolph was a Marxist. Right. Bayard Rustin was a Marxist. They made this biopic of him. They barely mention it. It all centers on the fact that he's gay, but he was never closeted about his sexuality. They completely ignored the fact that he was the last of the great socialists. In the United. Martin Luther King was a socialist. Everybody around the SCLC was a socialist. It was the old left. The left led the movement for racial equality in this country. So it's kind of ridiculous to say that Marxists don't take race seriously. It's kind of ridiculous. It's what the current college-educated left says to distance itself from that very tradition and to calumniate that tradition. The point is, so Marxists always were in the forefront of these struggles, but they were always contemptuous of what today we call identity politics. Well, why?
Yeah, what do you mean by identity politics?
Identity politics is the vision of race or the vision of, say, gender, social issues that reflects elite views or solutions to the problem of race. So let's just stick with race or gender. The identitarian conception of race focuses overwhelmingly or almost exclusively on this thing called discrimination. Now, discrimination is real, and it affects all Black and brown people. And what it really is, whether or not the technical definition of discrimination is, do you get a job that's reflective of the actual skills and the actual abilities you have? And either you're not allowed to have the job at all, or you paid less, the glass ceiling situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is we get rid of discrimination, you get racial justice. But now, for a lot of women and for a lot of people of color, the issue isn't that they're getting inadequately paid for the job they're doing, or that they didn't get the job for which they have the skills. The issue is, even if they fully get paid for the job they're doing, it's going to be a shit wage.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a job at Walmart and you get exactly the wage that a white worker is getting or a male is getting, you don't have a living wage.
Yeah.
Or if you don't get the job at all, fine. Let's at that section of the labor market where you're applying for jobs, the other job that you do get, where you're not discriminated against, is still going to be a shit job. So you have two visions of jobs now. One is the upwardly mobile section of women and people of color who are in fact experiencing a glass ceiling and who are maybe only getting 80 to 90% of what their white male compatriots are getting. For them, what they're trying to get is the full value of their skills, the full value of their abilities. And they see discrimination as something that is blocking their acquiring the full value. So they have no problem with their position in the class structure.
Yeah.
What they want is to get the full returns for that position in the class structure.
Mm-hmm.
But for a working class woman or a working class person of color, if you take away discrimination, they're still screwed.
Yeah.
So their battle is not against discrimination. It's for jobs themselves. It's for social services. If you're an upwardly mobile person, you probably got a pretty good health plan for yourself. For about 40 or 50% of the American working class, they got no health plan.
Yeah.
For them, they need socialized medicine. So there's no such thing as race politics. There's race politics and gender politics as envisioned by elites. And then there's the kind of race and gender politics that's been articulated by and fought for by labor parties and by the working class movement. When we use the word, people like myself on the left, identity politics, we are referring not to the struggle for race justice, because we've always fought for that. What we're referring to is the way in which race justice is narrowed down by elites to simply fight for the concerns of the wealthy women, wealthy people of color. And who in their right minds should be supportive of that, unless you belong to that class?
Well, thank you for that.
All right. Thoughts?
I love what he said. I guess my thought is, how do we get back to the old left? How do we get back to the old left that was the driving force behind the overall better economic situation that existed, pre-1970? And again, it wasn't great for everybody, but it was great for a much larger portion of the population. And then how do we get back to that left that still is truly concerned about everybody's welfare, be it black, brown, male, female, whatever your sexual orientation is? And that's the frustrating part for me, is because I feel like sometimes I get caught up in the new left, and because I see what happened to people I knew growing up, people I knew in my past work life. I've got my own experiences with just being law enforcement. Let's take law enforcement, right? There was a day in my life, not just a day, but a span of time where I was a avid consumer of marijuana. And I can think of 5 different times where I was pulled over having just finished smoking or while smoking, and the way it was handled completely different based on either the 2 times I was by myself, and I promise you they could smell it. One time with my brother, literally caught us with it on us. Wasn't a large amount. Literally, we weren't going to be distributing it, literally just consuming it for ourselves. And the 2 times where I was with black men, and both of the times that was with black men are the only two times where more than a single cop car was called to the scene. I lost more than 20 minutes of time of my day, right? The exception to that would be the time with my brother, and that's literally because they caught it with us on us. We were going through a roadblock, and there were so many more things going on besides just the weed, right? I literally didn't have my driver's license on me. My Jeep that I had at the time wasn't registered with a good registration plate in Indiana yet, and it was expired here in this area. We were still let go in the end without any extra effort, without more police officers being brought to the scene. So I guess, it really, I want to get back to the left that he was talking about, because that's the left that I think really moves mountains.
Yeah. I think, I think when I think about your question of how do we get back to that, I feel like the first order of business is to wake up our friends who think they're on the left, but are too bogged down in all these culture war issues and too, rightfully upset about the like bigotry and all that stuff. Because again, it's true, it's real, it exists, right? But we also need to see that they're just playing into the hands of the elite. They're letting that weapon, that the elites are wielding work against them, right? And they're keeping us on the left divided. So going back to what Vivek was saying, is like your working class left, and then you've got your professional class left. So to me, the order of business is to have the working class left wake up the fucking PMCs, that's what they're called in the literature, professional managerial class, to wake those people up. That's the world I came from. It's the PMC world, right? Those upwardly mobile lefties, right? Wake them up and say, guys, if you want shit to change, you need to find solidarity with your working class lefty bros and sisters, like you've got to make yourself uncomfortable. And you know what? I can actually give you an example that I witnessed in academia of how there is that class divide even in the left. So a coworker of mine was interested in unionizing our workplace, right? And my workplace was filled with, that PMC folks, all the, intellectuals, those who were on the tenure track, they were in that professor, I guess, class of people, right? But then you also had your like staff workers who were the paraprofessionals who were degreed people, but made a shit ton money less than those PMCs, right? And then even, like we had janitorial workers and all that stuff. So there was a unionization effort, right? And when he approached one of my colleagues who was in the PMC class about joining the union, he literally said, no, because the needs that professors have are different from basically the peons. Like the professors have a different set of needs than those on the bottom, is basically what he was saying, and didn't want to join the union as a result. Like he literally thought that he was something special, way more special than the needs of like the paraprofessionals on the bottom who were making shit wages and were constantly being cut when the budget cuts came down and that sort of thing, right? Yeah. Like he literally could not and would not allow himself to be amongst the peons, like there's an attitude reflected in that decision. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real. And that is like, I'm above these people. I'm better than these people. And I wouldn't dare, stoop to that, is basically how it came across. And so unfortunately, like I joined the union and some others that I know joined the union, but I would have to say that most of my PMC colleagues did not.
That's tough. That's tough. So, I'll tell you, as I've gotten older, and especially being aware of the world we live in, especially here in the United States and the way things are going. I appreciate the union more than I ever did when I was in the union. And I wasn't in the union long, but um, I did work for one of the large uh, parcel carriers that has a union. And at the time, I was frustrated and thought the union was a bad thing because I felt like they were protecting. I was working twice as hard as somebody else that was getting away with not working to the level that we all were being asked to work. And again, this is completely the structure of capitalism that drove it more than anything. But my frustration with the union was that he was being protected, um, not doing any real work, and this was fucking intensive physical labor. Um, and so that for me at the time gave me a bad taste of the union. But there were so many other benefits to it that I look back at going, yeah, that was a great. I should have stayed. I absolutely should have stuck that out and made that a lifelong career with that company. And yeah, I tell people all the time now, especially young people that I come in contact with, if they're considering going to work for a union, I praise unions, and I don't currently work for a union. Um, but yeah, I think their unions are a great thing. And it sucks that the professor did that, and that there is that classism but again, that goes back to the capitalist structure that we live in. You get to feel like you're in a better place if if you don't need the union, or if you're a professor whose needs are different. So
Mhm. Yeah, it just that if there was anything that I was always really tuned into, like my whole time there, that just irked my last nerve on a daily basis, it was the classism that I witnessed every single day. And John, that was just one example, like one blatant example of the classism. It happened in so many other ways in other areas. And so, yeah, when I think about how to get back to it, it's waking up these snotty ass PMCs and being like, and just letting them know, look, your interests are closer to mine. You're more likely to find yourself in my class than you are the class above you. So get with the program and like join with the lower classes, if you will, and see that your economic and material interests are way more aligned with them.
yeah. I wish somehow we could also do that for the working class on the right, and help them see that we're being divided on things that aren't going to help us in the long run. It's going to continue to hurt all of us in the working class.
Yeah.
And because I know they're caught up in it just as much as those of us on the left. Um, and it sucks because we're all playing our part in the game that we don't want to be playing in.
I highly recommend that you go and check out this whole interview, because you can visibly see Adam getting uncomfortable with the things that Vivek is saying, because again, what Vivek is saying it's true. Everything he's saying is true, but it's a truth and a voice that the left has not had for a very long time, right? And so Adam is very much, you can tell he's like, I would probably guess that he would be a PMC, lefty or liberal or whatever, but PMC for sure, professional managerial class. And so it was just interesting watching him get uncomfortable and push back. Like you could just see him like processing in real time, like, oh, wow, yeah, that totally makes sense. But shit, yikes, kind of goes
Yeah.
against the
What we've been
conditioning I've
Yes.
been undergoing,
Yep.
like
Yep. I mean, it's
so.
and that's part of the deconstruction that we have to do. Um,
Yes, there's the answer to your question. Deconstruction.
Yeah, right. And I know most people think of deconstruction and associate it with religious deconstruction, but for me, it's deconstruction around, the American mythology and American exceptionalism. Also, it's deconstruction from capitalism. You know what I mean? And these things are, and that whole identity politics battle is another tool of the capitalist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they've done a really good job of conditioning us all to be to make that our fight instead of the real fight of being class.
Yeah. I think another like super important task is getting out of your echo chambers, like your media echo chambers. Like I was saying earlier, like it's a real thing. Like it's so real. And I know like as someone who's like a highly empathetic person who couldn't have been more, I guess you could say woke, DEI or whatever, just a few years ago. You're living in your echo chambers and you're receiving these messages that just constantly like affirm and reaffirm like all your biases, right? And so that can feel good, right? And the idea of like getting out of your echo chamber and making it a point to like listen to another person's point of view, whether it's like political, social, religious, whatever, it's very hard and it's very daunting to think about. But I have been intentionally doing that. Well, I say intentionally, but I guess I should be honest and say what has led me to get out of my echo chamber was, Charlie Kirk's death and watching the right just sort of implode over it. And so that was the hook. That was the thing that drew me over to like, oh, what's Candace saying today? What's Tucker saying today? What's Fox News saying about, like what's the narrative in this particular camp, right? And so just being interested in that, I, as a side effect, was exposed to like, things and perspectives that I hadn't really considered, right? That hasn't changed my values or like my morals or my principles really. I just come to them, I feel like in a much more informed way now, and also am able to have more sympathy and empathy, I think, for the other side in ways that I couldn't have imagined just 4 years ago. You know what I mean? So that's my pitch. I think that's important too, as far as like bringing the left back around to where it should be and where it was, 100 years ago. So anyway, that was fun. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
No. I think that was a great conversation.
So anyway, oh wow, I see you put together some notes here on your this guy.
Mr. Larry Ellison.
All right. Ew, can't stand him. All right, tell me about him.
All right, boys and girls, for this episode's Why We Can't Have Nice Things, get out your Scooby snacks as we unmask another Scooby-Doo villain. And this episode's Scooby-Doo villain is Mr. Larry Ellison. Currently third as of my notes, third on Forbes list of wealthiest people, 256.8 billion. And by the way, for this last year, he did actually, for a short time, take the number one spot.
Congratulations.
Right. How did he earn his wealth? Well, honestly, you and I got him to being the wealthiest person on earth, or one of. The taxpayers through the CIA. So in 1984 actually started in 1977. Mr. Larry Ellison is really gonna bring home 1984 for those of you familiar with that book. Larry Ellison is a two-time college dropout, co-founded Software Development Labs, which later became Oracle in 1977 after reading an article from IBM about a coding language called SQL. which Ellison turned into a database. Its very first customer was the CIA. And IBM became a customer of Oracle's a few years later. By the way, the CIA does not, well, caveat, does now, did not at that time have a way to generate revenue. So how did the CIA pay Larry Ellison and what became Oracle? Again, our tax money.
Mm.
Oracle secured a $50,000 contract from the CIA in 1977, which was the foundation for the first database. The CIA still has an ongoing relationship with Oracle involving various contracts. The CIA's budget for 1977 is not available to the public, but an article from the Washington Post says the cost estimate for the CIA in 1977 was about $750 million. CIA does not generate revenue in the traditional sense, as it is a government agency funded by taxpayer dollars to carry out its intelligence and national security missions. However, today it does have a venture capital arm called NQTEL that invests in technology companies which can identify, or I'm sorry, which can indirectly support its operations and objectives. And I find it interesting that taxpayers are funding billionaires and the government to spy on us.
Oh, so depressing.
Yeah. So it is 1984, and Larry Ellison, aka O'Brien, represents the party.
Mm.
Larry Ellison, in a recent meeting, said, "We're going to have supervision." Ellison said, "Every police officer is going to be supervised at all times, and if there's a problem, AI will report that problem and report it to the appropriate person. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on." They even said that they'll no longer have to do police chases because they'll just send up drones, and the drones will follow the vehicles home or wherever the people go, and then they'll be able to report back. Mind
Who
you,
asked for
drones,
this, man? Who
Yeah.
asked for this?
yeah, you tell me. So 2 plus 2 is equal to 5, or whatever the party tells you it is equal to. Why do I say that? Because I want you to think about this. Using AI to control the narrative. My theory on AI and facts. Elon Musk, not long ago, reprogrammed Grok, his AI, because he thought it was using wokeism and woke facts. So he went in and rewrote things and rewrote its algorithms so that it would actually be a little more right leaning, we'll say. It's got a
Mhm.
nickname called that people call it Mecha Hitler. So Skydance Media and the Thought Police. We're not going to spend long on his son, but his son does own Skydance Media. And I'm going to tell you why they're the Thought Police. On July 7th of 2024, American media companies Skydance Media and Paramount Global announced a definitive agreement to merge in a deal valued at $8 billion, forming a new entity known as Paramount Skydance Corporation. Are you familiar with Paramount?
Yes.
Yeah. The agreement values the newly formed entity at approximately $28 billion. In 2023, after grappling with debt and striving to remain competitive in the entertainment industry, Paramount's parent company, National Amusements, explored potential merger and acquisition opportunities for Paramount Global. David Ellison, the son of billionaire Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, quoted saying, "Day one of a new Paramount, praising the company's legacy while promising to lead it through an exciting next chapter." Ellison promised to turn Paramount into a tech-forward company that blends the creative heart of Hollywood with the innovative spirit of Silicon Valley. So the reason I am going to tell you that they are the thought police and that why this is so bad in so many ways. One, let's circle back to being able to control AI and why it's bad. So before people had cameras in their hands, and everybody was always able to film things, back to our conversation earlier about racism and race and wokeism and all. Back in the 80s, there was the big so-called crack epidemic. And nobody that was white would believe anybody that was black and how the police were treating them. Same thing, very similar situation happened during the Three Strikes You're Out with the the Clinton Biden administration.
Organization, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, same thing. So now they're going to be able to rewrite history. They're going to be able to tell you what to believe because they're going to be able to slowly, after you've spent time using AI and learned to trust AI, they're going to rewrite AI and they'll change facts and they'll delete facts and they'll delete history and they'll make you believe whatever the fuck they want you to believe. And then your TVs, as most of us already know, are always listening. So, as with the book 1984, Thought Police, while you're watching TV, if you're having a conversation with somebody that goes against the party, guess what? Next thing you know, you got a knock, knock, knock on your door. It's a bad idea, folks. The whole thing is just a bad fucking idea. Oh, and by the way, what has Mr. Ellison done with some of the money he's earned? He bought an entire Hawaiian island for $300 million.
Let me guess, he's building a bunker.
Didn't see anything on that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, he bought the Hawaiian island Lanai.
I gotta see. I mean, that's what these billionaires are doing, man. I'm gonna look it up. As I was getting ready to look this up, I was thinking to myself, don't forget to mention Israel, because that's a huge part of who Larry Ellison is, right? And of course, I Googled Larry Ellison bunker, and the AI overview says co-founder of Oracle has invested in a massive underground data center in Israel, which has been described as a strategic necessity, as well as owning nearly the entire island of Lanai, Hawaii, which he aims to make self-sufficient. There are widespread reports and rumors that many billionaires, including Ellison, possess private bunkers or fortified shelters, but specific details of a personal bunker are not publicly confirmed due to high secrecy. That motherfucker's got a bunker.
Hell yeah,
he's doing it. He's building his bunker. That's what he's doing.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. And so for those of you out there who have never read 1984, it is a fucking amazing book. It is got like 4 completely amazing, very, very gripping sections. But there are some parts of it that are just super long, super dry. If you've not read it, I would highly recommend listening to an audio adaptation that you can. At the time listened to it on Audible. It's got Andrew Garfield, Cynthia Erivo, Andrew Scott, Tom Hardy, to name a few people. It's a little over 3 hours long. It is an amazing listen. Check it out.
Yeah, and the only 2 things I would add are, 1, Larry Ellison is a huge Zionist. We have a bit of a Zionist problem in our government right now. So, yeah, be aware of that. I definitely echo John's recommendation to read 1984, or at least listen to it. But I also want to recommend it's a movie called 2073. We've talked about it in episodes past.
Ooh.
I would argue that 2073 is our day's 1984 literary work, because it's definitely basically a preview of what's on the horizon in terms of like the surveillance state and just how all the billionaires are gonna rule the world and watch every little single thing we do and say.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a modern, updated version of 1984. I've got to go back and finish it. I could only get through, I'm guessing, about half of it, and I had to turn it off.
Yeah. Again, I guess my content warning for it is, do not watch it if you're feeling sad, down, depressed, hopeless. Do not watch it. Do not watch it. Watch it on a good day where you're just, you're having a good day.
Yeah. Maybe have an emotional support dog next to you or something.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. For sure.
And that's all we have for today. We hope you're learning something, and most importantly, realizing just how much the Epstein class hates us all. As a reminder, all the sources we use to compile the information discussed in this episode will be linked to the show in the notes. So please check them out.
Join us next time as we continue to wonder what the fuck, America, while also calling out the oligarchs destroying our country. Currently, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Reddit, and Substack by searching @WastePeoplePod. Thank you all for joining us. Till next time. Later.